And welcome everyone to this public meeting, December 16th, 2024. And we call this meeting to order. We welcome those that are in the gallery and those that are participating this evening from home, and welcome our staff here that are here this evening. Please ensure your cell phones are turned off or on mute, and we'll go through the roll call now. If members of council could please unmute their mics. Councillor Oak, please.
Here.
Councillor Neeb.
Here.
Councillor Dietrich.
Here.
Councillor Vaughn.
Here.
Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
Here.
Deputy Mayor.
Here.
Thank you. All members of council are present. And item number 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures at this time? Not seeing any. Go on to item number 3, purpose of the public meeting, and turn the meeting over to our staff. Madam Clerk.
The purpose of this public meeting of Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of South Huron is to consider and review proposed amendments to the official plan under sections 17 and 26 of the Planning Act. This meeting is also to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments on the proposed amendments. Council will not make a decision on the proposed amendments at this public meeting. Based on the recommendations and information received at this public meeting, the proposed amendments will be presented to South Huron Council for adoption at a regular council meeting. It is the County of Huron that has final approval authority for the official plan amendments. Following the adoption of the amendments by South Huron Council, the finalized version of the amended official plan would be presented to Huron County Council for final approval. The public registry for the official plan review is located by the door and will be held by myself, the clerk. If any member of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decision on this application, they are to provide their name and mailing address. Notice for this public meeting was posted in the Exeter Lakeshore Times Advance on southhuron.ca, shared on municipal social media, as well as aired on 90.5 MyFM. An emailed copy of the notice was provided to prescribed agencies and those who have shown interest or provided comments. Of note, the link attached to the notice of public meeting that was sent by email on November 25th, 2024, was directed to the official plan review project page, which included all information of the review. The notice provided information on comment submission, contact information, and noted that for further information to see the website. On December 11th, South Huron's new website launched. The link was redirected individuals to the general official plan page and not to the review project page. The general official plan page shows the current official plan only. The public meeting itself with the attachments was published to the website on December 12th in accordance with the procedural bylaw for tonight's meeting. And I would advise that the general official plan page on the website has been updated to now contain a link to the official plan review page. Any specified persons or public body under the Planning Act who has made any verbal or written comments prior to the adoption of the official plan amendments may appeal the decision. Please refer to the County of Huron website, www.huroncounty.ca, for details about appeal rights.
Thank you. And we've turned the meeting over to item number 4, Ms. McIntosh and Ms. Van Amersfoort from the Huron County Planning Department. Welcome. Please proceed whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Finch and members of South Huron Council. Thanks for the opportunity this evening to discuss with you the ongoing South Huron official plan review. The primary purpose of this evening is to provide the public and agencies an opportunity to speak to Council regarding the project. There are a number of high-level changes I will speak to at the beginning here, but it is important to note for Council that none of these changes are new. These are changes that were captured in the Committee of the Whole meeting held in October. We're simply going to summarize at a high level for any members of the public who are maybe engaging more recently in the project, but largely just a summary of what Council's already heard. Certainly, we'll turn it over to the public for their comments, but if there is time at the end of the meeting, Denise and I are happy to provide any clarification on any of the items noted. So to summarize where we're at in this project, tonight's public meeting is the last statutory requirement that must be fulfilled before Council potentially adopts the amendment to the official plan. The official plan is the document which sets the long-term vision for South Huron, specifically in terms of where and how development may occur. The last review of the official plan, which was adopted in 2003, was in 2013. So as we've discussed previously, this review is certainly timely. And the review provides us with an opportunity to make sure the document reflects the current and future goals and needs of the community as we adapt to changing issues and conditions. Public consultation has played a crucial role in this project in ensuring we can identify those goals, issues, and needs aforementioned. Between community tables, open houses, and property-specific discussions, staff have engaged with over 225 folks. This engagement has certainly informed the draft to date. As per the Planning Act, which is the legislation regulating planning in Ontario, South Huron's official plan must be consistent with the Provincial Planning Statement 2024, and it must conform to the Huron County official plan. Huron County Council, as noted by the clerk, is the approval authority for South Huron's official plan. So in addition to these pieces of legislation, there are a number of studies at both the local and county level that have been done in recent years that aid to inform the revised official plan policies currently contained in the draft. Those are just listed on the screen here for council and the public's information. These really aid in being able to respond to the local context. The plan is made up of two components, being the policy text and then the land use schedules or maps. Part of this review included modernization measures for the mapping components, and that includes enhancing user friendliness and accessibility, simplifying the mapping where possible, and then more accurately delineating boundaries of agricultural and natural areas. So I'll now take an opportunity to guide council and the public through what we've heard throughout this review process, and then what proposed policy and mapping changes have been put forward in response. Something the public has really shed light on through community consultation is what they've observed in terms of the changes in the community in the past 10 years. And the main observations noted are highlighted on the screen here. Some of these changes listed on the screen are community specific, while others certainly follow a trend we're seeing both regionally and provincially. Now we'll briefly move through the various sections of the plan and highlight the policies we believe will aid in meeting the needs and goals of the community over the future planning horizon. There's no real major changes to the agriculture policies, but we have noted on screen some of the policies which will continue to protect the agricultural land base over the long term while supporting the needs of the farming community. As noted at the bottom here, interestingly, 93% of lands in South Huron are rated 1 and 2 in the Canada Land Inventory on agricultural capability, aka they are the best lands for agriculture in the country. And so protecting and enhancing these assets is key for the municipality's long-term prosperity. And we just wanted to highlight some examples of sort of change in action as we speak to specifically maintaining housing flexibility on farms. These are just a few projects in South Huron that have benefited from increased policy flexibility to allow for housing to support farming operations, including additional residential units and on-farm labor housing. And again, this is directly related to aiming to support the agricultural economy. If we turn our attention now to the natural environment policies, we will note that the plan now reflects the reduced setback for adjacent lands for provincially significant wetlands from 120 meters to 30 meters. That was legislated by the current provincial government under the Conservation Authorities Act last year. The plan also provides enhanced direction for consideration of the natural heritage system as a whole. It recognizes the value of natural spaces when it comes to mitigating impacts of climate change on both agricultural and urban lands. As well, Huron County's natural environment update has also been implemented into the document to better reflect the natural features that exist on the landscape. The plan continues to direct development away from natural hazards such as flood-prone areas in the municipality. The official plan contains policies for aggregate resource deposits. The mapping in this revision has been amended to make minor changes to where these resources are identified, and that's just based on updated data as to where licenses have been surrendered post-extraction, as well as to reflect natural features. The policies have also been updated to provide direction for aggregate recycling and regulation of water bodies resulting from below the water table aggregate extraction. The plan continues to reflect the direction of the province, being to recognize aggregate as a non-renewable resource that is required for development and is worthy of protection. Here's an example of some lands in the municipality following under the water table aggregate extraction, resulting obviously in some large water bodies. Previously, the province did require that lands used on an interim basis for aggregate extraction must be rehabilitated back to an agricultural condition. The new 2024 PPS recognizes that restoration back to an agricultural land use where under the water table extraction has occurred is not very feasible. And so thus this is no longer a requirement for rehabilitation plans on licensed pits. A major component of the South Huron official plan is balancing the protection of agricultural lands while ensuring there's adequate designated lands for future growth over the next 25 to 30-year planning horizon. South Huron's population is anticipated to reach just under 16,000 by 2051. And so the revised plan seeks to address what scale and type of growth is anticipated, where this growth should be directed to, and are there available lands and servicing within the existing settlement area boundaries to accommodate. South Huron has a great variety of urban settlement areas. These communities provide residents with varying living environments and services. The vibrancy and opportunities offered by the various towns in South Huron is highly valued by South Huron residents, and that was discussed quite frequently during consultation. The plan directs development to settlement areas with a growth allocation policy, which focuses on fully serviced areas being those anticipated to take on the highest portion of that growth. And those areas in this case being Exeter and Greater Grand Bend. This chart just outlines the various settlement area boundary changes that respond to accommodating forecasted growth. The big takeaway to note is that the modifications to the various settlement areas represent a municipal-wide approach to strategically align accommodating future growth in areas with both hard servicing, i.e. water and sewer infrastructure, and soft servicing, i.e. community services. Again, this is that growth allocation policy I just mentioned in action. I'll highlight sort of the area-specific changes over the next few slides here. So the review did seek to determine South Huron's capacity for employment growth. In Exeter specifically, acreage-wise, there is determined to be sufficient lands available for future industrial development. However, it is certainly noted that there would be benefit to an inventory of smaller service parcels that are shovel-ready for independent businesses. Limited growth opportunity is available presently in Huron Park for employment uses, and so accordingly, an expansion to Centralia is recommended. This is proposed to accommodate future employment uses by making use of existing infrastructure and creating opportunity for co-location with existing industries, specifically as it pertains to connecting the current settlement area boundary to the existing former Dashwood Industries property to the south. In Greater Grand Bend, a minor expansion to the industrial designation of the Motorplex is recommended, and that's just given the limited employment opportunities in the Greater Grand Bend area within both either Lambton Shores or South Huron. So just to outline for council and the public, the lands shown for expansion in Centralia are on the left, outlined in red, and then the lands proposed for the modest expansion in Greater Grand Bend are on the right, outlined in red as well. As noted, Exeter is anticipated to accommodate the majority of future residential growth. As shown on the screen here, there continues to be a proposed expansion to the settlement area boundary to the east for lands designated residential, shown north of Huron Street in the hatching there. Greater Grand Bend is the other location in South Huron that comprehensively between South Huron and Lambton Shores provides the highest degree of service allocation available to accommodate future growth. The revised plan seeks to provide a framework for this cross-border growth with input from Lambton Shores. The plan provides specific policy direction to guide future development in lieu of a secondary plan, including promotion of mixed uses to support residents' needs. There are two proposed expansions to the Greater Grand Bend settlement area in South Huron, with the first being to the southeast along County Road 81 or Grand Bend Line, as well as Mollard Line. This location is proposed to be brought into the settlement area to allow for contiguous and coordinated growth with lands developed and designated for growth on the Lambton Shore side of the municipal boundary. We have received sort of conversations and comments to date from all of the landowners whose lands are proposed to be brought in Greater Grand Bend. No objections to these expansions. In fact, the landowner for the most southernmost property is, as noted in the agenda package, requesting a larger expansion than that which is currently proposed. And this aerial photo just demonstrates the extent to which the patterns of development along the Lambton Shores South Huron boundary in Greater Grand Bend has already been determined. The green parcel fabric on the screen represents draft approved development on the Lambton Shores side of the line. And it just demonstrates that the community has largely grown to its borders on the Lambton Shores side. So this again emphasizes the importance of comprehensive growth planning for this area. The second proposed expansion to the settlement area boundary is to the north along the east side of Highway 21. These lands would be designated primarily urban to allow for future land use to be specified at the time of development. This was at the request of the Ministry of Transportation, and that's to ensure that development is best coordinated with infrastructure planning. The aerial photo here shows the lands to be brought in outlined in red. We did hear specifically from the landowner directly north of the Solhaven development. He does not object to the change, but wishes to note that he does not intend to develop these lands at this time. He's expecting that there would be no change in his tax rate, given that he continues to use these lands for agriculture, and he does not seek to be responsible for any expansion of sewer costs unless he were to essentially tie into that sewer. In Crediton, there is a proposed redesignation of approximately 50 acres of land from urban to agriculture. This was discussed with council specifically at the October 15th Committee of the Whole meeting. This redesignation is proposed to allow the settlement area boundary to more accurately reflect the amount of land required for projected growth, and also to remove lands not easily serviceable. I'll take a moment to just speak to how we are addressing housing more generally in this update. So unsurprisingly, housing inaffordability was the most noted concern for South Huron residents during the public consultation portions of this process. Holistically, the plan's policy framework is built to require building up and not out onto farmland through minimum density thresholds throughout service settlement areas. Part of the strategy in ensuring that these thresholds are maintained is looking to permit fourplexes as of right, again, in those fully serviced settlement areas. Lastly, the plan seeks to promote strategies to deliver more affordable housing, whether it be through church conversions, revitalized downtown spaces, intensification of underused spaces, community partnerships, etc. Again, just looking at some sort of existing examples of the various housing types in South Huron as shown on the screen here, it's just highlighted that these variety of housing types really help to contribute meeting the needs of the community. When it comes to commercial uses, these continue to be directed primarily to settlement areas. In Greater Grand Bend, the plan is intentionally protective of Grand Bend's main street as per the wishes of Lambton Shores, while allowing additional opportunity for highway commercial uses along Highway 21 pending appropriate approvals. In Exeter, the plan does introduce a mixed-use designation at the north and south ends of the historic core, and that's to promote additional residential development in this sort of transitionary space, as well as permitting commercial and community facility uses. And just to wrap up here, some other key changes in the plan throughout the various sections are highlighted on the screen here for council and the public's information. And then in terms of next steps, we are anticipating bringing a final draft with revisions in response to any comments received this evening, potentially in February, with the hope being that council may be in a position to adopt the plan at that time. From there, the plan, as noted, would be subsequently brought to Huron County Council for final approval in March. So that concludes our presentation portion of this evening. Happy to answer any questions of council following receiving public comments. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Well done. Are there any questions from members of council at this time? Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for all the many references in the official plan that include climate change, adaptation and mitigation. That was much appreciated. I know that was asked about from a stewardship and a climate change perspective, particularly in the Lakeshore area. Yeah, so I did notice in the package, there were a couple of properties that had asked about different considerations. One of them you've already spoken to in the presentation about the Greater Grand Bend area over on Mollard Line, that there might be a there's a bigger acceptance now for the whole farm. So are we expecting to see a amendment to that between now and February for that piece?
Go ahead, Denise.
Through the mayor, that landowner is with us this evening. They plan on giving a submission to council this evening, so it would probably be most appropriate to hear from the landowner first, and then staff can respond as to next steps.
Okay. Should we do that now or should we just do that later? Because I have other questions.
Yeah, we'll go through the questions from council first, and then we can go to the public right afterwards. So are there any other
Okay.
questions from other members of council? If not, go ahead, Councillor Vaughn.
Okay, so there is also a piece of correspondence from Baker in relating to lands in Crediton. There's actually two pieces, one from the landowner and then one from an interested developer, which happens to be Dryden. And so I know that at the committee of the whole, we went through a number of options about what to do with that land. And from what I'm reading in that correspondence, there is a request to, I think, revisit what we already decided. So I'm also wondering what we're going to be doing with that. Are we revisiting that piece?
Thank you. Through the mayor, I think it would be fair to say that there's some new information that's been brought forward in regards to that proposed deed designation. So it would be fair to say that, yes, it would be appropriate for both staff and council to reconsider in light of the new information. Again, I'm aware the landowner, or the prospective purchaser is with us this evening. I anticipate they are going to make a submission. And yes, there will be certainly an opportunity to revisit some of the land use shifts, the urban settlement area boundary shift specifically after we've had a chance to hear from the landowners.
Thank you. Any other questions? One more. Go ahead, Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, I actually have more than
Oh.
one, but if
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
may continue. Ted has got his hand up too. Would,
Councillor Ropes, you have something? You go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you, and thank you. I look forward to the submissions on those two properties. Those are questions I had as well. The other thing I noted that the health unit had put in some recommendations, and one of them was bikeability and accessibility. Obviously, I'm not against that idea, but I think we're early days. We haven't done our active transportation study yet. That's supposed to be happening. So I'm not sure whether we're putting the cart before the horse on that, and whether that's those areas, because it didn't include that in all the areas. It was only mentioned in some of the settlement areas and not all of them. And so I just wondered whether we should take it out or whether we should make sure we put it in all of them. So because I know that was one of the concerns about the Trident property of not having sidewalks all the way to Trident down to Grand Bend. So there's some discussion that we need to have as a council as part of the active transportation and other. The sidewalks was going to be part of that that study, I believe.
Staff?
That is true. There's the sidewalks, there's the trails, all of that, yep.
So yeah, so I just wondered if we should, whether that's something that we should look at either taking out or expanding on in the official plan, looking to your guidance.
Certainly, I think thinking about how we foster connected communities, how persons can move through community, whether, from an AODA perspective and wanting to ensure barrier-free movement, whether it's walkability, cyclist movement. I think that's something that's really important to foster in all spaces. So I'll certainly do a careful read through to make sure that it is adequately reflected in each settlement area. I personally don't feel there's a need to remove it in advance of an active transportation. I think that could enhance more specific direction. But I could point out an example, for example, the plan of subdivision that was done in Stephen Township for Huron Park. That was I think a great example of where South Huron looked at the connectedness. There's a PXO as a result, new sidewalks coming in, a new trail coming in. I mean, that's an example of where at the time of development, it is the appropriate time to look at where we can make opportunities for improvement.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughn, you had something further? Go ahead, please.
I did. Yes, okay, so this takes us back a bit to the official plan amendments that came at the committee of the whole. And this is where the Greater Grand Bend area and the Exeter area were both declared as primary focuses of new development, and they were also designated primary settlement one. So kind of referred to with different language in different spots. So I just found going through from that statement to the area of 6.1.2, where we talked about the actual Highway 21 in the Greater Grand Bend area, a bit of confusion, because at one point in the official plan, we do talk about the Lakeshore residential having its own settlement area as a classification, and make a distinction that the Greater Grand Bend area expansion, if you will, and settlement area is really only relative to what's east of Highway 21 and what's happening at Mollard Line and on the north side of 81. But when you actually get to the section called 6.1.2, and it talks about the Greater Grand Bend area in more detail, there's 6 pages of information, some that talks about the growth area, and then about 3 pages that talk about the Lakeshore residential. So they're divorced at one part of the official plan, and then they're put back together. So in that 6.2.1. So I wasn't quite sure why that would be addressed together. So it talks about on the Lakeshore piece, it talks about a number of different standards, a whole list of development standards, a list actually from A to M, with references to consideration of the need for public access to the beach as item H. And I really wondered if you might provide a little bit of clarity around that. Also, too, there's a whole nother section in there that talks about if in the future event there is a new area that applies for a subdivision, and again, this is under the Lakeshore residential, there's a whole host of standards to be applied. And it just sounded an awful lot like zoning and approval going forward for a subdivision. And I wasn't sure why that was included in an official plan, especially since it's not anywhere else in the official plan, at least that I saw in any other area. So I wonder if you could comment.
Happy to, through the mayor. So the Lakeshore residential section, so if we start in terms of the separation. So in terms of the P1 classification, so that's a primary settlement area with which we would consider it to have both hard and soft surfaces. So it's a full suite. We consider Greater Grand Bend, when we look at it holistically with the community, with the portion of it that's within Lambton Shores, we consider that to have hard services. It has water, it has sewer. It also has a number of soft services, grocery stores, medical, library, etc. So we're looking at it more from a complete community perspective. However, from a growth allocation perspective, we are not considering Lakeshore residential to be part of that Greater Grand Bend. We are not directing growth to the Lakeshore residential designation. This official plan goes so far as to diverting from the direction in the county official plan when it comes to growth allocation. The county official plan sets out the proportion of growth across the county that's meant to go into Lakeshore residential areas, broadly speaking. So everywhere from Amberley all the way down to Grand Bend. When we looked at the Lakeshore residential area within South Huron, it does not have full services available. There is not, it has significant natural heritage features, and there simply isn't an opportunity for intensification at this time. So we actually adjusted the numbers to say less growth would be allocated to the Lakeshore residential area and more growth would be designated or allocated to those areas that have full services in terms of, again, water and sewer and all the soft community services. So we were very intentional, I think, in reflecting the fact that the Lakeshore area that you have in South Huron, again, the area west of 21, there simply isn't a great potential for intensification, at least not at this time. So that was reflected in the OP. Now, in terms of whether or not there might be, let's say, I know there's a number of syndicates and different ownerships as we go up 21, but let's just say one of them wanted to create a new lot. The standards are there to allow for direction in that event. So if one of the syndicates wanted to create a new lot, at that time we would say, well, yes, access to the beach is important. If everyone else has access through said area, we would like that new lot to have access through said area. So it's not to say in any way that the area east of 21 is going to be expecting or directing to have access through the lands west of 21. We fully appreciate the concerns that are there. We've also tried to make reflection in the official plan for the Port Blake Day Park, recognizing, yes, it does provide an access to the Lake Huron shoreline today. That's really important to people, but keeping in mind that property is owned and really dedicated potentially for a different purpose long term. Should the Lake Huron, Lake Elgin water intake facility require an expansion, those are the lands in which it would expand. We did receive direction and comments directly from that organization asking us to make sure that was clear in the official plan. So to go back to your question, yes, there are standards there in the event that someone wants to do development west of 21, but we're not directing growth there. We go so far as to say that no intensification in the Lakeshore residential area will be permitted until such time that there are full services.
Sorry, I did notice that. Okay, so this was in terms of a new potential subdivision. Should someone want to go there, this was an attempt to let whoever that might be have an idea what they were expected to do. Yeah.
Through the mayor, it's already part of the official plan today. We simply didn't delete it.
Okay, all right. Okay. There were also there was mention in some part of that around the greater Grand Bend area about a design brief. It was referenced as being required. Could you elaborate on what a design brief actually is?
Happy to. So an urban design brief would be required for any proposed plan of subdivision at the time of development as part of a complete application requirement. It would be a way of outlining in detail how the design of their proposed development responds to the community, both from a cultural heritage perspective, the natural environment spaces. How does it respond to the community design principles in the official plan and lead to a connected and contiguous community? And so that's what it's meant to do in a way that a draft plan simply doesn't, right? I mean, they're going to provide a draft plan as part of their application. This is really asking them to explain their design process. Why did they design it the way they did? What does it respond to? And how does it lead to sort of an enhanced or improved community in the end?
Okay, so that would be, is that just dedicated strictly to the Lakeshore area, or does that apply to developers who might come up with a subdivision plan in other areas within South Huron as well?
It certainly applies in Greater Grand Bend. That section was written specifically to address some of the comments that came through that open house in lieu of a secondary plan. This was a way of addressing some of those concerns. Whether or not I also put it in for Exeter, I believe I did, but I would want to double check before I said that definitively.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Vaughn?
Um, there was one other little comment. At some point, again, in that 6.1.2, there was also there were two things. One, there was really no description about the settlement area that we're bringing in around the Mullard line and the north part of 81, like northern of 81. Definitely was in the map, the Schedule H2, but there wasn't really any verbiage in there around the Mullard line and across the street of 81. And so I'm just wondering if we're going to address that, take a look at that again, just to see why that might be.
Yeah, so the standard policies would apply for any new development in that area. I do believe I go into some detail about speaking about the connected community across the Lambton Shores boundary, and I even reference some of the community facilities that exist on the Lambton Shores side. So I can certainly go back and revisit if I could enhance it further, but there are some specific policies that specifically speak to our need to coordinate with Lambton Shores. As it's possible, we could receive a plan of subdivision that would cross not only the local boundary, but the county boundary, which would be a unique situation.
Yeah, it is unique. And just in terms of that whole integrated community thinking, there was also a mention that there was a potential opportunity to connect to adjacent lands in creating community trails. And I'm really not too sure what adjacent lands might be talked about because there's a lot of private land sort of all around some of those subdivisions. So what was meant by that?
So if we think of the area, if I go out County Road 81 or Grand Bend Line, if we were to think of the lands immediately to the east on the north side of the road, there would be the opportunity to create connection within the road fabric, the sidewalks. There is not a trail there currently, but should there have been, we would have had to continue that trail through. That's what we're thinking about as well as we go down Mullard. We'd like to work with the abutting community. There are some trails in that case. How could we design this community such that we have a cohesive, connected trail to enhance walkability, quality of life, access to outdoor spaces, etc.? If we're thinking about north on 21, yes, if there are, I'm going to use the property Grand Cove. That's a privately owned property. If they do not wish to have a trail connection on their property, clearly we wouldn't do it. But if there is the opportunity moving north with new developments to have a connected community trail, just because it's, it's not an ideal scenario, it might not be able to get all the way through, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't take the steps as they are made available to us. So it's about taking steps through development, and you never know, at some point in the future, there might be an opportunity for a connection that there isn't today. And if so, we would, advance that at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Denise. Councilor Oki had something.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few omissions or that I saw on some of the maps. There was a couple of the churches, community facilities, one on Thames Road, one in Crediton. Maybe it's buried behind the little note for removed from settlement. Not sure. And then highway commercial HJV equipment up on Highway 4 is, I would assume, is highway commercial. That wasn't showing up there. And just one last thing, just wondering if you would comment on one of the notes in there on page 57 talked about minimum affordable housing target is 30%. And just wondering that is development by development or overall for the municipality, or how that and how does that compare to the official plans with neighboring municipalities or a county? Is that a county-wide policy?
Mm-hmm. So this is looking at 30% of all new development meeting and being affordable. And what we mean by affordable is that, so if we look at someone's household income and we took 30% of their household income, that would represent their housing costs. Today, for many families within South Huron, Huron County, and Ontario, they're spending well in excess of 30% of their household income on housing costs, right? has a lot of detrimental effects to quality of life. So what that official plan, it's a target. It's something we want to be moving towards. Does it mean that every plan of subdivision that crosses council's desk will have 30% truly affordable housing? No, it doesn't. But it means that we're going to be working towards, in different ways, how can we advance more affordability? In some cases, it will be, yes, they're singles, but they're smaller singles, right? We've seen frontages down as low as, 15, even down to 12 in South Huron. That's markedly different from the 25-meter wide we would have seen if we were sitting around this table 20 years ago. When I think about different housing types, so yeah, really encouraging people to think about building up apartment units, other type of more compact forms. We've seen a number of triplex developments go up here in Exeter. Moving to fourplexes would be another way that council could take a step towards incentivizing affordability. When we think about truly subsidized housing, that's not something that the market is going to be able to yield itself. Through this community consultation, we had a community table with the Perth Huron Builders Association. We certainly had an opportunity to speak with them about building costs, how can we help to encourage more affordable housing building, but also really receiving that message that, this isn't something they're going to be able to do on their own. It simply doesn't work from a business model perspective. That's where the county, right, in working with upper levels of government, really needs to be the lead in helping to deliver those more affordable types of housing, subsidized housing that we see, for example, coming in on Sanders Street. So it's a goal. It's not something we're going to hold every development to.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if we have no more questions from council in the light of time that we have left, that we could perhaps call those members of the public who have lands that were mentioned earlier, Denise, that could potentially add to this conversation. Madam Clerk, would you know who they are, or Denise, would you know who they are?
So Caroline Baker is online.
Is that one of the ones that we'd mentioned earlier in Councillor? Okay, go ahead, Carolyn. Welcome.
Good evening to the mayor, members and council. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Perfect, thank you. Is it all right if I share? I have a brief presentation. Mr. Don Dejean is also coming to the podium. We'll be working together to present some of the information, but would it be all right if I share screen?
Absolutely, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just let me know when that's up on your end. Oh, I see it.
We see it.
There.
Yep.
Wonderful. So yes, no, we appreciate the opportunity to present at the public meeting this evening. I did want to take the opportunity to thank the county and municipal staff. We have had the opportunity to have dialogue and discussions and important meetings with respect to land in Crediton and the proposed land use designations through the draft South Huron official plan. Just for a little bit of update and background. So Mr. Mark Steffen is, I believe, also in the audience. He is the owner of the property we're going to talk about this evening. And Mr. Don Dejean from Trident is here looking to purchase the lands to develop for residential purposes. I'm just going to go to the next slide. So just a bit of a refresher, as was mentioned earlier this evening, there's options being looked at to de-designate lands in the primary settlement area 2, Crediton. I believe it's being referred to as right sizing of this particular settlement area in relation to historical growth patterns, as well as servicing capability. The image or mapping in front of you was option C, which was presented to Committee of the Whole in October of this year, looking at including around 50 acres of Mr. Steffen's property, which is on the northeast side of the settlement area, and removing approximately 17 acres from the defined settlement area, thereby reducing the development potential by 17 acres. You'll see that staff are also recommending 2 other parcels on the west end to be removed, but there is a large piece on the southeast side that is proposed to entirely remain in the settlement area. Our understanding from staff is that these lands on the northeast side, being Mr. Steffen's lands, were removed primarily for 2 reasons. One being the ability to obtain vehicular access for any future development, And the second is the availability of servicing to support development in the Crediton area. To our knowledge, we haven't identified necessarily a distinction between lands on the north or south side in terms of their ability to be more suitable for development. They both have road frontage. They would have access to the same services, and no particular distinction between type of farmland currently being used or topography. So certainly the current landowner has been working on this property for a few years, attending 2 formal consultation meetings with staff. They have completed both the stage 1 and stage 2 archaeological assessment. They've completed a functional servicing brief with updated information received from staff in December of this year, and certainly, as mentioned, work through the formal consultation process. So I want to just spend a little bit of time on the development concept put forward by Trident Group, which I believe addresses some of the reasons or rationale from staff as to why this land originally was proposed to be removed or now partially removed. The concept in front of you includes a range and mix of housing types. It has 90 single detached dwellings, 60 street townhouses. And what is unique to this proposed development is Trident is looking at developing a land lease community. This concept at a high level has about 240 land lease units. So this would allow an individual to have a smaller lot. They're certainly quite a bit smaller than a single detached. And the intent is they could put a permanent but modular or smaller, we've heard them as tiny home or modular, on the property to assist in housing affordability. The goal really is to provide substantial increases in housing affordability and range of housing, not only in Crediton, but South Huron as a whole. And Trident has been working with Northlander in terms of providing those models and determining a suitable market that would support this development in the more immediate term, certainly over the planning horizon that we are all working with under the provincial planning statement. This would include, and maybe a bit of a distinction from some earlier meetings with staff, and certainly the committee of the whole in October, when staff referred to some new information, is there's a second piece of land that is being assembled within this development that has frontage on Victoria Avenue East, such that a new municipal road can be provided and connected, both vehicular, pedestrian, as well as servicing. So that certainly gets to one of the comments received by staff about this project, as well as emergency access and a secondary access. So certainly a plentiful opportunity for access. We've also had Grit Engineering review the documentation from South Huron related to servicing. It's my understanding that there would be capacity within the services on Victoria Avenue East. An upgrade would be required depending on the ultimate number of units at some point to the pump station, and then ultimately to the extra pumping station. So certainly Trident and the developer would work with municipal staff in terms of any upgrades, but certainly the pumping station and the services are there. In my view, as a land use planner, I believe that this proposed development has met the test established by staff for the South Huron official plan review to be maintained within the settlement area. They've demonstrated that there is market demand for the proposed use, that it meets the requirements for servicing and access, and further to earlier conversation this evening around the target for affordable housing. Certainly more than 50% of the units within this development would certainly meet some thresholds related to affordability and attainability, and bringing a form of housing type that we haven't seen in recent years developed in the community. So we would kindly request that staff and council consider as they move to a decision meeting in the new year, retaining the entirety of the currently designated lands as designated. And we'd be happy to answer any questions and of course, continue to dialogue with staff leading into the new year. And certainly, Mr. Dijon, if you'd like to add anything further, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Don Dijon, appreciate everyone's time here tonight. I guess I should say this afternoon still. But we are with an affordable component here that isn't going to be seen easily in other areas. Crediton does offer that. We're with a better price point for a number of reasons, but land economics are one of them. And we have services there. We are with a relationship that we're looking forward to being with the Northlander Group. And it gives an option. And I think when we met with staff and when we spoke to staff at these meetings, some of our flow and some of our logic was conveyed. And I asked, council to recognize that. The flow and logic being that positioning this development in some of the affordable zone, which is reflected on the orange color a bit more, can be enhanced with some integration with stormwater as well. So this plan we see may not be the finalized copy I think we looked at, but there is some real logic to having some of that connectivity that we spoke about earlier with trails, pedestrian access, and we can really do something here that's a little more unique if we get the full opportunity of the land. We're quite excited by it, actually. It's going to be great. Tying into what we're trying to do in Grand Bend with trail connectivity. It's a great thing for the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just in the interest of time, we have about 4 minutes left before we have to adjourn the meeting because it's a public meeting. We have a regular council meeting starting at 6. Are there any questions to Dawn or to Carolyn at this time from members of council? Okay, not seeing any. Okay, thank you very much, Dawn. Yeah, thank you, Caroline. Do you have anything further, Carolyn? Okay.
Sorry,
very well.
doing 2 buttons at once. I apologize. Through the mayor, no further comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
So there is another individual who would like to speak. We could also counsel, as there are a number of individuals who would like to provide comment on this process. There would be a motion to proceed with council and public comments, deferring that over to January 13th at 5 o'clock, which is the next public meeting that's set by council currently,
Okay, so do you want to we'll proceed with that motion now?
if council chooses to do so.
Okay, do we have a mover to move? Councillor Neeb, is there a seconder, please? Councillor Vaughn, any discussion on that? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you. So again, members of the public, we have another meeting starting at 6 o'clock. So rather than going further down the rabbit hole and discussing more and more on this, we want to make sure we have fulsome discussions so that everyone's properly represented. So that's just how the system works through our procedural bylaw. But we thank everyone for showing up tonight, and we look forward to the January 13th meeting where we can continue the conversation. Thank you. And Council, Madam Clerk, sorry, Ms. Masood Coulson.
Let South Huron Council now closes this public meeting at, is it 5:54?
Councillor, Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Neeb. All question on the favor, and that carries. Thank you.